Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Township of Wainfleet Special Council meeting of March 22nd, 2022 to order. And we'll start with our land acknowledgement statement. I'd like to begin the meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples, acknowledging the One Bowl and Spoon Treaty. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest, general nature thereof? I see none. And we move right into our staff report, and our treasurer, Ms. Louie, will start her presentation.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. So just for a quick recap of the budget process to date, the capital budget presentation and deliberations took place on March 14th. March 16th, the operating budget was deliberated and combined tax levy impact was discussed. Council provided staff with direction to make additional cuts to the operating budget prior to this evening's meeting. This evening's meeting is an overview of the combined budget for council's consideration and approval. So council deliberations and staff direction. So during council's deliberations, there were a number of items discussed and some recommended changes for staff to make. So the general assistance was a line item was created in lieu of the grants and donations given to in prior years to be allocated to community festivals, as well as to support the Wainfleet Seniors Group. So staff would like council to provide direction regarding the allocation of the $6,000 that is in the operating budget. Miscellaneous expenditures were reduced as well as the municipal grant provided to the library. The library budget remained unchanged. The increase over prior year will be funded through the application of the library's operating surplus. So lastly, council, understanding significant operating pressures staff were challenged with in developing the budget, requested a portion of the modernization fund be used to stabilize the rate and decrease the overall impact to the taxpayer. Staff have confirmed the Parkland Dedication Fund can be used to offset the municipal contributions towards the recreation complex project, for example, the walking trail. So conversations have been taking place with both the township's consultants regarding the possibility of funding a portion of the central station with development charges, as well as the region for details surrounding the future debenture. This information will be shared with council once confirmed and prior to the special meeting of council regarding the central station. So this slide just illustrates a snapshot of the 28 proposed capital projects and which categories they fall into. So the total of the 28 projects is $9.7 million. Again, this slide is just kind of a snapshot that illustrates the year-over-year comparison for the operating expenditures. As noted at the last meeting, significant operating pressures that impacted all departments were increases to health and the general insurance portfolios for the township, the annual cost of living increases, as well as the current inflation environment. So commitment to infrastructure. So this slide is an illustration of council's commitment to the infrastructure levy, which was established in 2015 and outlined as an annual contribution of 2% of the tax levy. So this year's contribution is the $1.1 million. So this slide here is just a debenture snapshot. So what's currently in the budget in 2022, as well as there was one capital project, the roadside mower, that staff have proposed to debenture. So that's just those numbers aren't actual. The rate and the terms of the loan could excuse me could change once it comes back from the region. Once we have to acquire the mower first, but that's an estimate using the current rates or the indicative rates from Infrastructure Ontario at this point. I broke it. Fixed. Okay, so this slide is just a slide showing what this means for the average tax bill. So it's a blended increase combined with the infrastructure levy, capital, and operating, and it's a 5.9% blended increase for the average taxpayer, or for every taxpayer, sorry, but this just outlines what a tax bill would look like for the average assessment as well as the median residential assessment, which these figures, the assessment figures, the average and the median, are provided from MPAC. So as you can see here, it's for the average residential assessment, it's an increase for the entire year of $256.79. And this last slide here is just the motion that would be before council for consideration once any other questions or comments are received.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Louie. Okay, so rather than read the motion, because we have to do some deliberation yet on that $6,000, decide where that wants to go, and if there's any other discussion on the budget as presented tonight and the last two meetings, that now is the time to have that. So suggestions for the $6,000 for the seniors, and what was the other seniors and?
So through the mayor to all of council, so there was a line item that's established for the seniors, which is $5,000. That is straightforward. The donation to community groups and festivals is set at $6,000. I'm just not sure how council would like to allocate that between our two, the festival and the fair.
Okay, discussion, thoughts, anyone? No thoughts? Who else do we, okay, Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Have you received any correspondence from either requesting anything?
So through the mayor to Councillor Gilmore, so I personally have not at this point. It was kind of discussed at the time when the grants and donation policy typically would have been accepted, that it was just going to be considered with budget. However, I do believe the manager of operations has received an inquiry from the fall fair.
Okay. Richard?
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Yeah, the fall fair is gearing up this year, and so is Marshall. Everybody's opening up this year. They have in the past received grants through the grant program, and they were inquiring if the same type of allocation would be given to them. We did do a review. Marshville, for instance, does pay the majority of their costs for the event. There's only a few items that were never charged, like for instance the soccer field rates per soccer field. They use it for parking, that type of thing. But the majority of the request is being made by the fall fair. For instance, the Marshville, for instance, when you calculate their fees or the rates that would apply to them if they were renting the facility, we actually bill them. They request an invoice, and we bill them every year for hydro costs, days of the arena, the pavilion. We normally don't charge for tables and bleachers because we don't have a set fee for those. But they do additionally pay for water consumption as well as hydro that's metered. For the fall fair, for instance, they offset the total cost with the donation from the township, and all the rest of the fees were always waived. So for instance, the fall fair, if they were to charge the applicable rates for everything, would amount to closer to $13,000. So the township's always given them a donation, and that donation is usually to help offset some of those costs.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cridlin.
Gilmore, were you done?
No, you have the floor, Councillor Cridlin.
Through you, just to continue the conversation. So the last time we made the allocation, do we have those rough numbers? Because again, we didn't do anything for a couple of years. So if we could maybe just find out what the previous levels were for both, I think that would be helpful for next.
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
Through your worship, if I may, I did forget one thing. These calculations that I mentioned were operations calculations. They also don't include, for instance, whatever fire provides. So I'm not sure what the costs or associated services that the fire department provides as well.
Okay, thank you. Are you able to find that easily, Mallory, or is it going to take quite a bit of time?
So through the mayor to all of council, so the last time that, that the grants were given out, so the Agricultural Society had requested 5,000 in 2019, and they were requesting 5,500 in 2020. And the Heritage Society hasn't historically asked for, like, these are not in kind. These are, because traditionally we were either doing one or the other. We weren't giving them the in kind as well as the cash donation. So they were just requesting some advertising monies, anywhere between $50 and $500. The Heritage Society had requested in the past.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cridlin, follow up. Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you. So likely in 2020, we budgeted for it, the 5,500, but didn't spend it because of COVID, I'm assuming. But at any rate, so right now you're concerned about $6,000. So I guess what I would think, we'll give them the 5,500 out of that, keep the other 500 if Marshville asks for anything, and if anybody needs any more, then we can take it out of the council grants and donations, which is historically every year forever underspent. And then go from there. That'd be my approach.
Okay. Is any thoughts on that, Councillor Van Vliet?
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the fair asked us for $5,500 for new display cases, didn't they? Was that what their ask was? Does anybody, because, okay, I think that's what they asked for. My second question is to the chief. When the fair is on and the firefighters are out there, is that billed to the fair or is that billed to whoever's doing the truck, the polls?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the fair has not been invoiced for fire department coverage historically. So normally we will send 2 trucks and 8 personnel for the 3 nights. So using the MTO rate, the calculation that we have in our fees and charges bylaw, that cost to the taxpayer is just shy of $26,000.
Carry on.
So we never charge them or the organization that brings the polls in, because it's not really for the fair, it's for the polls, because they're 2 separate entities, correct?
That's correct. Because it's run through the fair, it's always been a free donation, if you will, to the fair.
Okay, I'm thinking that's a lot of money, and they charge a lot of money to get in. Okay, something we might want to research. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? As I've always said all along, bearing in mind that, you know, what do we have here in Wainfleet? We have a fair, we have Marshville, and you know, the seniors, Heritage. We don't have a lot, so if we put all the financial burden on them, a lot of them wouldn't be able to survive. So the taxpayer as a whole is paying some of it. It's a fair bit, but on the other hand, these couple events we have are the most important events we have all year. So it's kind of important that we keep them going and help them along, my opinion only. So, as per Councillor Gilmore's comments, is that okay with everybody? So 5,500 allocated to, what was it, Heritage? Sorry, the fair, sorry. And the $500 put aside for anyone else in that group that may need some help. It's only $500. Any other thoughts on that? Any other concerns, directions? Councillor McClellan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm still at the $26,000 for the fire department to be there for the tractor pull. That's a ton of money. Like, I mean, there's $13,000 in Canada Day, there's $6,000 in this. That's a lot of money for, and somebody, it's a for-profit. Like the guys that come in and put it on a tractor pull are for-profit. It's not the fair, right? So somehow I don't know if they should be getting a free ride on that, even if they're paying 25%.
Yeah, so that's not really applicable to what we're doing just right here tonight. I agree with you, though. That is something that we could certainly discuss down the road, Will.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, as noted, both the fire department and the operations department do provide various in-kind services to to those community groups. As the mayor just pointed out, perhaps council would like to see a report come back to sort of put some quantity or quantify the extent of that sort of support being given. But again, whether or not that really directly impacts the sort of direct financial sort of contribution that you're discussing with this line item is certainly something for, debate, but it might be something that we can push off to the next meeting.
Okay, so is that okay with everybody, that allotment of those funds, that 6,000, as Councillor Gilmore alluded to? Okay, we make that direction then to our treasurer. Any other discussion regarding the budget this evening? Okay, seeing none then, I'm going to read the motion and we'll have a vote on our budget. That the presentation by the treasurer regarding the draft 2022 budget be received, and whereas at its meeting of March 14th, 2022, March 16th, 2022, and March 22nd, 2022, the Council of the Township of Wainfleet has considered and evaluated the operational requirements for the township to ensure the efficient delivery of municipal services to the ratepayers of the Township of Wainfleet. Now therefore it be resolved that the 2022 capital budget expenditures of $9,710,857 be approved, and that the 2022 operating budget be approved with a tax levy requirement of $5,965,094 for local municipal purposes, and that an infrastructure levy in the amount of $1,117,874 be approved for local municipal purposes, and that the staff be directed to report back to council regarding the annual taxation levying bylaw as required by the Municipal Act 2001 upon setting of the tax ratios and requisition amounts by the Regional Municipality of Niagara and other applicable bodies. Mover seconder for that, please. Councillor Cridlin and Councillor Gilmore. Is there any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? And that budget is carried. Thank you. And thanks to staff. I know there was a lot of work went into that, so it's take a breath time. It's done. Okay, we move on to remuneration reporting under the Municipal Act. Ms. Louie, it's yours again to brief us on, please.
Thank you. So through the mayor to all of council, so this staff report, ASR 10-2022, is a staff report that's required under the Municipal Act, Section 284, which outlines that the treasurer of the municipality must, before March 31st of the year, provide an itemized statement on remuneration and expenses for the prior year for council and any of the boards. So this report's just for information, and it outlines all of the expenses from the prior year.
Okay, thank you. So the potential motion that admin staff report ASR 10-2022 respecting Municipal Act 2021 remuneration report be received for information. Mover seconder on that, please. Councillor Gilmore, Councillor Van Vliet. Is there any discussion? Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Is it possible to bill Councillor McClellan for a couple of K-Cups and a bottle of water so I can be returned to my rightful place in the bottom of the list? Just levity from the budget.
Yes, thank you. We're going to look right into that. Okay, is there any other discussion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, all in favor? Opposed? I'm going to think that was in favor. Yes, thank Thank you. You're still laughing.
He's still thinking about the K-Cups.
You're still laughing. All right, thank you. That's carried. Okay, memorandum, proposed bylaw amendment, officer definition, and we'll look to Ms. Earl to speak to that, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As you know, we've had a number of recent complaints regarding the fouling of township roads, specifically in the northeast corner of the township. Staff has reached out to the Ministry of Transportation to aid in enforcement of it. Typically the reduced load period that we're experiencing right now through March and April. It's come to our attention that the ministry cannot enforce our bylaws because of our definition of officers, not including peace officers. Those are, peace officers that are able to enforce the Highway Traffic Act. So my memo is essentially letting you know that we need to update the traffic and parking bylaw, the AMPS for non-related parking offenses bylaw, as well as the fouling of roads bylaw to change the definition of officer to include peace officer. Essentially, that's just going to help us or give us an additional tool for enforcement, so it's needed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Motion being that the memorandum from the Community and Development Services respecting proposed bylaw amendment officer definition be received as information. Mover seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. Is there any discussion? A very simple thing here of just including in the bylaw the definitions of the people that we can have more enforcement. Discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And bylaws, are we at 25 minutes? 25. That bylaw 15 through 18 is listed on the agenda, be read and passed this 22nd day of March 2022. Mover seconder, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Gilmore. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We have no closed meeting, no rise in report. If there's nothing further, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. 22 minutes. Your battery should still